Hey guys, Pedro here to tell you about the latest from At the Gates, The Ghost of Your Future Dead, out April 24th on Century Media Records. The album has 12 tracks, 42 minutes in length, and this is the band's 7th full-length studio album. They are a Swedish melodic death metal band. When it comes to the design of this record, I think you're going to find an album that is compact but not overly dense. Infusing a lot of melody into these songs allows the album to have natural ebbs and flows and showcasing two sides of the same coin, the more dense and heavier side of their sound with a more melodic, melancholic side. Alternating tracks that have these two different ideas, these two different perspectives, definitely makes the album more fluid. It's definitely a record that leans a little bit more to the melancholic, melodic side, which overall then affects the experience that the image of the record leaves behind once you reach the last song. Speaking of reaching the last song, the only issue that I have with the design of this record is having an instrumental track as the second last track on this album, specifically because it's a song that doesn't connect with the previous track or with the one that comes after. It feels a little bit out of place. If you're going to have a song that has these characteristics, an instrumental track, very guitar driven, that doesn't really tie in with anything around it, having it in the middle of the record, I know it may sound like you're breaking the fluidity of the album, but if you're looking at it from a side A and side B perspective, having it in the middle of the record, it actually plays better. It allows the listener to reset the batteries, it allows the listener to recharge themselves to the second half of the album and almost feel like the record becomes two different records with this interlude dividing both sides. That to me would help give more meaning to this song, because where it sits right now, it feels a little bit meaningless as far as the design and experience of this record is concerned. Once you get into the sound, this is definitely a brighter, or at least there's more emphasis on the melancholic, melodic, brighter side of the band's sound. There are still a lot of heavy, dense songs on this record, but the experience that comes out of the melody of the guitars and the melancholy that is born from it definitely defines what the overall idea and the overall look will be once you listen to this album. It's a record that has a lot of movement in its sound. The density of the more heavier, stylish songs doesn't necessarily distort the ability of still understanding what all of the different elements are doing, including the bass. The bass is actually very predominant throughout the mix on this record, but not in a jolting way. More in a matter of gluing things together, of bringing experiences together. So even on the denser songs, you're still really able to see the forest from the trees and all the different layers that goes into that density. But the tracks that have a little bit more of a hook, the tracks that bring you in and hold you there, are definitely the more melodic, melancholic songs. They allow the album to breathe a little bit better. They allow the album to be a little bit easier to digest overall. And therefore, it also allows for the more heavier and denser songs to not feel as cumbersome. So this is an album that really understands the internal dynamics of its tracks, the DNA of the band, the experiences that they have created throughout the discography, everything coming together under one single umbrella on this album. Sonically, an incredibly strong album with great production that also emphasizes the more definition that exists within the heavier, denser songs, but also emphasizes a little bit of darkness that exudes from the melody and melancholy that some of these guitar riffs put forward. And speaking of guitar riffs, this album has a great guitar sound. Melodic, heavy, open, dense. It has a little bit of everything as far as the guitars are concerned, and a lot of the darkness that the album exudes really comes out of the more melodic songs and really comes out of that more melancholic aspect that those same melodies carry. The heavier, denser tracks, the guitars are there for the heaviness of it, not necessarily to create an ambiance or an atmosphere of darkness. They leave that for the more melodic side of their sound, and the guitars definitely deliver across both spectrums. Once you get into the drums, they are a huge contributor to the overall heaviness of this album. They're perhaps a little bit more emphasized on those heavier tracks. You feel more of their presence, you feel more of their size, but even in the more melodic and melancholic tracks that are more guitar driven, the drums still play a very important role, at the very least defining how wide those melodies can go. So it's a great drumming sounding album to complete what you get out of the guitars, because guitar-wise this album is also phenomenal. And the bass, like I said earlier, predominant in the mix but not in a jolting way, allowing you to see all of the different pieces that makes the At the Gates sound. Once you get into the vocals on this album, considering everything that has happened, considering how the vocals were even recorded for this album, I think you have to keep all of that in mind when you listen to the vocals and understand the dynamics that went into making this album from a vocal perspective. I still loved it. I really enjoyed it. I think there's a little bit more agony in the vocal delivery. There's a little bit more sense of urgency in the vocal delivery. You notice that in some words, in the way they are accentuated, in the way they're delivered. It's not your prototypical At the Gates vocal stylish record, but once again, considering everything that was happening, it makes sense that this album, from a vocal standpoint, feels a little bit different from what we've gotten used to. But it carries other elements that are equally important in order to convey the message of the record. The melancholy that comes in the vocals, the sense of despair that exists in the vocals, the agony that exists in the vocals, these are all elements that definitely help make this a more complete record all around, and a record that, in my opinion, will close off the legacy of At the Gates. And if this is going to be the curtains coming down on the band, I think they finish it off on a very strong note with another very strong album. As far as favorite songs are concerned, I picked very different tracks, but there's a sense of evolution between them. Starting off with A Ritual of Waste, perhaps the most dense song of the three that I picked, definitely the heaviest one of the three, and the heaviness and density of the track really defines the song itself. You can still detect all of the different layers, including the bass, but it's really about how heavy and how much sound the track can carry. It has a more melodic chorus, but the overall feeling of heaviness and density that the track has overshadows that more melodic chorus and becomes the defining factor of the song itself. The vocals on point to match that same density, to match that same aggression, creating such a strong harmony between the two elements and keeping it consistent top to bottom. Then you have Of Interstellar Death. Now this is not as dense as A Ritual of Waste, not even close. Definitely more melodic and definitely more melancholic, a little bit more of an open sound. Still a heavy track, but not as heavy and as dense as A Ritual of Waste. I think that's an important aspect. It's perhaps the track that comes right after in terms of the levels of density versus the levels of melody. In this song you can clearly see one going down and the other going up. It's fast moving, it's super driven. The guitars, specifically in the verses, are very driven, very impactful, in your face, a lot of intensity, and then a little bit more dark and melodic in the chorus, things slowing down a little bit more, and the vocals come in differently with a more defined and refined impact on the message of the song, but also that darkness that exists within that chorus. The vocals really help levitate that darkness that exists within the melody of the chorus itself. Last but definitely not least, Tomb of Heaven. This is the most melodic, melancholic song of the entire album. So we went from super heavy and dense to kind of heavy but with some more melody in it, to a song that maybe lacks a little bit of heaviness but definitely overcompensates as far as the melodic side is concerned. A more traditional melodic death metal track, one that emphasizes guitar melodies, open spaces, letting the track breathe with a magnificent chorus. The chorus on this song is incredibly hooky, incredibly memorable. The reverb that exists on the vocals in that chorus makes also the vocals stand out, not allowing the vocals to feel like every single song has a very similar approach. Adding that small element to them in this chorus definitely helps bring them to the light and allows them to stand on their own. The solo sections on this track are phenomenal, for sure infusing even more melody into the track, even more melancholy into the track, allowing the song to be very immersive at times. The solo sections just really shine a bright spot into those elements, into that vibe, into that atmosphere, allowing the song to be both memorable and catchy. I don't think the two are necessarily synonymous to one another, but you definitely get both feelings, both experiences out of this track. This is it, At the Gates, The Ghost of a Future Death, out once again April 24th on Century Media Records. Let me know your thoughts on the band. Hit me up in the comment section. I'll see you all in my next video. Take care, guys.